Let's open up the new vintage collection figure of Count Dooku from Attack of the Clones, VC307. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. It's been a really busy and exciting time for fans of the vintage collection line from Hasbro here in New Zealand. We've had not one, not two, but 3 new waves of action figures from the TVC line showing up locally here in New Zealand. We have the wave containing this new Count Dooku figure from Attack of the Clones, that absolutely fantastic wave containing all of those iconic characters from A New Hope, and we've just spotted the Minds of Mandalorian wave as well. It is a very busy time, so I've got a lot of figures to go through, and today I'm going to be opening up the Count Dooku figure from Attack of the Clones. I started collecting in the prequel era, so I'm quite fond of seeing new prequel era characters on my toy shelves, so I'm very excited to open this one up. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, of course, I'm going to open up this bubble so we can take out the figure and check out all of the details. We've got some really interesting accessories on this one, but first let's take one last look at the backing card. Of course, Count Dooku was first introduced in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. He had some really iconic fight scenes there at the end, so I love that they have put this particular vintage collection release on a Attack of the Clones backing card. Of course, the very first figures of Count Dooku came out during Hasbro's Saga collection back in 2002. But for me personally, I think a lot of the toys from this era had a lot of interesting play features that felt like they were more targeted towards kids than collectors. Certainly, if we compare the figures from this era to the modern vintage collection line, I'm not sure how well they're going to stand up in terms of accuracy and the kind of features that collectors are really looking for. So I have 4 older Count Dooku figures that have been released over the past 22 years that I'm really keen to see how this one compares to some of those earlier versions. We had some interesting accessories and action features on some of those older figures, but let's take a closer look at the backing card, because initially I didn't really spot this because of the blue background, but we do have a Force lightning hand accessory here in the back. I'm really keen to see how that one displays on him. It's kind of tucked there in the back, kind of disappears against that blue, and I think it's really fun that we have such a vibrant blue for the character accent here behind the nameplate and behind the character. Of course, it kind of flows on from the Force lightning here running from his fingertips. So I think that that's really quite a fun use there of the packaging design. We have the very strong red Attack of the Clones logo up here. I really like the promo image here from the film, of course, shooting Force lightning. We've got the Kenner logo, and we can also see that because of Count Dooku's very unique curved hilt, we have both a hilt and a lit saber accessory. A lot of the recent vintage collection lightsabers, we've simply removed the blade if you wanted a hilt, but I think because of the way that the peg would have to curve a little to fit in there, we have both versions. This kind of reminds me of some of those older toys where we got both versions. Very fun that we've actually got both there. So let's take a look at the back. We have the modern style of the back of the vintage collection ones, where we have an image of the front of the backing card and a posed picture of the figure there in the front, and we can see the Force lightning just kind of shooting off the side there, posed with his lightsaber, and we can see the soft goods cloak a little bit more clearer here. They generally tuck the soft goods cloak in behind the figure when in their bubble, so you don't really see the full scope and size of the cloaks, particularly with characters like Darth Vader. You don't really see the cape there, so I think that that's a really nice example there of what he's going to look like. Not sure if I'll be able to do this exact pose, but we'll certainly give it a try. And we can see that this one is number VC307. We have a little bit of a blurb for Count Dooku here as well. Once a Jedi trained by Yoda, Count Dooku became disillusioned with the Jedi Order and thirsted for greater power, ultimately leaving the light side behind and becoming Darth Sidious's disciple, Darth Tyrannus. I think it's interesting that they have not capitalized the words light side. I do find that on a lot of sort of official Star Wars merchandising, they capitalize the L and S, or for dark side, D and S. Interesting that that is lowercase, just a little thing that just kind of stuck out there to me. We have the vintage collection logo there and a lot of barcode, copyright and intention text there as well. Overall, overall, I think this one looks pretty nice if you like to keep your figures mint on card, but personally I am very, very keen to see this one out because I want to check out all of those accessories. So let's open them up. So now I have the Count Dooku figure and all of the accessories out of that packaging so we can take a closer look. And first things first, we can really fully see his soft goods cape now. Really hangs nicely over the shoulders. It was tucked behind his arms. Got a little bit of creasing here, which I hope will ease out over time. This side, surprisingly, very nice and straight. We just got a few sort of creases here on this side. And something that wasn't really as clear, we have a two-tone cape, which is really fun. Of course, Dooku's cape has a sort of paler inner. When he wears it back during some of those fights, you can really see the differences there. That's not something I've seen them do very often. A little bit trickier than, say, Darth Vader's cape, which is just black all over. This is going to be a little bit tricky to kind of really get that iconic sort of swoosh back. We're going to have to sort of play around with it a little bit. Kind of sits a little bit awkwardly up around his neck, but we can kind of get there. Might be one of those cases where if we sort of clip it with something to sort of hold it, it will perhaps form this shape over time a little bit better. But I actually really like the way that it kind of sits there over his shoulders. We've got a little bit of seaming here at the shoulders where you can see it has been stitched into shape, but overall it is just those two little lines there at the shoulders just to give it a curve over the shoulders. The rest of it doesn't have any seaming, not down the sides, not along the back or anything like that, and it is a raw edge, so I'm going to try to be careful because you will kind of feather this up over time, and sometimes with a bit of handling it starts to become a little bit more fluffy and you lose some fibers. So I definitely think this one's going to look better without a bit of sort of excess handling, but I really just was fascinated to see that difference inside the lining there. One of those details that's really hidden when it's in the packaging. And of course, previous versions of Count Dooku have used sort of plastic to form both his cape and the chain. Because it's a little bit tricky to put a plastic clasp on a soft goods cape, we have a bit of metallic silver cord here used to hold his cape sort of across at the front. If I'm very careful, we can see that that is just inserted through a hole with a small knot tied at the end. So if you really, really want to, you could remove this and perhaps upgrade to something small. Maybe you want to put in a tiny little metal chain in there just to sort of make it a little bit more accurate, but that wouldn't be too hard to remove. There's just that little knot there on the underside. And if you want to pull it off or pop his head off to remove it, you have that option there as well in case you are very skilled at making tiny, tiny capes and want to have a go at making something perhaps a little bit more finely made. But I'm quite impressed that we have actually got that two-tone. I was not expecting that. I think that that was a lovely detail. Of course, the rest of Dooku's outfit is a little bit plain. When you sort of pull the cloak back, it gives me basically brown Imperial officer. We've basically got sort of a brown tunic sort of hitting where Jedi robes tend to hit across on the thighs there. Loose brown pants and high, sort of very Imperial looking black boots to the knee. Overall, I like the proportions here. There isn't too much detail to really sort of critique in a way. I like the sculpting here of the arms, the sleeves. Everything's pretty much as I would expect. We've got a little bit of detail here on the belt, but that sort of different color brown to the tunic here. We've got some striped sections there, and we have that prequel era black clip belt part there where we can attach the unlit lightsaber hilt, because of course, as we can see, this one has a large peg hole. I was kind of surprised by how large this peg is. They're generally a little bit shorter than that, so I'm hoping that this one's actually quite deep. Sometimes those can be very, very tight, so it'll be interesting to see how well that's going to fit in there. I like the sculpting on the sleeves here. That elbow join meshes in very well with the way that they've sculpted the draping on his sleeve there. We can clearly see the shoulders. I'm not expecting any kind of limitations to the range of movement at the shoulders. It's pretty easy to move around with just soft goods over the shoulders. There's no armor or anything else impacting on that hinge there. We can see a little bit of the articulation on the elbow from the front. But if we're going to bend the arm there, I think that looks very nice and tidy. Kind of completely hides that, and we just get a little bit at the back there. We can see the sculpting on the back continues. Nothing too fascinating there. We've got a little bit of draping. Of course, it's going to be pretty much hidden with that soft goods cope. We can see the articulation at the back of the knees. At the front, the pants are sculpted down over the knees. We can sort of see that line there with the plastics hanging over the knees. So if we check out that articulation, oh, he's a bit stiff. Oh, very stiff. Okay. Don't want to break. Okay, there we go. We can see that it's kind of hidden from the front, which I like. I don't particularly like it when you can really see all the articulation at the top of the knee. I'd much prefer it kind of swinging underneath. So from the front, you're not really going to see it there. Not that Dooku fights in a particularly adventurous way. He generally fights standing upright. And I like just the sort of small creases on his shiny black boots, just to hide that little bit of articulation that we have there at the ankles. But again, he fights pretty much very upright. It's his kind of his sort of dignified posture, his look of superiority, that he always sort of stands very upright. So I really like the way that the cape flows. He's generally, for me, going to be posed in a very sort of stand upright pose. His hands are pretty much the sort of posing we would expect from the Vintage Collection line. Oh, that elbow's a bit tight there. We've got pretty much a classic sort of C grip there, good for holding lightsabers, and on this hand as well. He doesn't have an extended sort of trigger finger for this one here. There is no gap, which I kind of like, that we haven't just got a generic grip, because he's never seen holding a blaster, only a lightsaber or force lightning. So very interesting there. And yeah, he's got a bit of a split in the sort of tunic part of his robe. There we can see the sort of top of the thigh articulation. If I can split that to the side, we can see that we can rotate him here at that seam. And oh, it's actually quite rubbery. If I can just move this arm out of the way for a minute, we can see that these parts here quite flexible. If you do want to sort of pose him around, we've just got a bit of fluff under here. Pretty much standard sculpted pants. Kind of useful, I guess, if you like to custom build. There's not too much very, very specific pieces, particularly on the lower half of him there. Just that belt is a little bit more specific to Dooku compared to, say, the Imperial Officer belt with the very recognizable silver buckle there in the center. I like the face of this figure. It looks pretty good as a likeness to the actor, Christopher Lee, of course. I like the grey hair. The painting looks pretty good. We've even got sort of the lines around the eyes. I think it looks really nice. Of course, that's something we really do like, personally for me, is the detail on the faces from the Vintage Collection era. That digital printing, we just get much tidier, fine detail. And I think this is a fantastic likeness going all the way. And we've kind of got that two-tone paint job for the hair as well. It's not just a flat grey. We've got some sort of highlights and lowlights there. There's two tones of grey there, which is really, really nice. I like that. So overall, I think he looks pretty cool now that I've got him out of the packaging. The soft goods cape is just so different to how he looked in that plastic bubble. I'm hoping that this will ease out a little bit over time. I don't want to use any kind of heat or anything. This is probably a polyester. It will probably just ease out over time now that he's been out of his plastic bubble. It just needs a little bit of breathing room there. Gonna have a quick little look at his accessories. I took a little quick glimpse at his curved lightsaber hilt. We've got some pretty good painted detail here. It's quite nice. And we've got that little red activator button there. And yeah, quite tidy. Sometimes these small ones kind of look like somebody threw paint on them very, very quickly. I'm actually fairly impressed. We've got a very nice, tidy silver stripe on that black section there. I really like that. And that peg is very deep. Now I'm going to very quickly see how well this is going to fit in his attachment point. I don't want to actually display it there. I like my Force users to have the lightsabers in their hands, but I want to just see how well this is going to fit. Oh, that went in there really nice. Oh, that's good. I was really worried the length of that peg might mean that it was going to be a bit tight. You can see that I can swing that. That's not too tight. And let's see how well I can pull that out. Just popped right out. Nice. I had one figure recently where I tried to put the little lightsaber peg in there. Wasn't going to work, and I just didn't want to have it snap off and get permanently lodged in that little hole there. So I just didn't end up utilizing that feature, but yes, very nice there. Okay, let's quickly try his lightsaber in his hand. So unlike some of the other recent lightsabers, this is all one piece. It's not going to come out. So it's all made from the red sort of semi-translucent plastic of the blade, and that hilt is painted over the top. Again, nice tidy paint job here. We've even got the little sort of red activator button there on the underside. I liked that sort of curved emitter part there. Really nice. Let's see how well he's going to hold it, because I'm looking at his hands. This looks like quite a tight grip. So I'm curious to see how well this is going to go in his hands. And I'm hoping I can just kind of press it in here. There we go. Have to look at some pictures to remind myself of which way. I think he kind of holds it facing out, doesn't he? When he sort of ignites it in front of Yoda. So I'm just going to have him hold him like that. That went in there pretty easily. Probably need to just kind of nudge his thumb around a little bit. Get it a little bit more like that. It's not actually as tight as I thought, which is good. Sometimes I get a little bit worried, especially with these vintage collection figures, with that articulation at the wrist. Sometimes they just want to fight with you and to move their wrists around while you're trying to sort of push something in those fingers. But that one went on pretty well, so we can kind of get a sense of the scale and how he looks with his lightsaber in his hand. Definitely going to work on some poses, because this is looking pretty cool. Okay, now last but certainly not least, we have what I think is potentially one of the coolest accessories I've seen with a vintage collection figure for a while. We have an alternate hand with Force lightning. I love this. This makes me think all the way back to the Saga era with those fabulous Unleashed figures. I loved the Palpatine Unleashed figure with those huge big Force lightning hands, and this is what this makes me think of. It really takes me back. So it's not as long as some other versions of Force lightning accessories that we have across different collectibles and action figures, but I think it's a pretty good scale, and it fit quite snugly in this packaging, which I'm quite impressed. We can see the fingers are sort of painted over this translucent plastic. We can see that it goes all the way through to the back peg, and when you look at it really up close, it kind of looks like the ends of the fingers are sort of chopped off, because we've kind of got the Force lightning running off the fingers. But I really like it. It was such an iconic moment in Attack of the Clones. It would almost not be a proper Count Dooku figure without being able to pose him with Force lightning. So really excited that we have this accessory. So I do get nervous pulling the hands off my action figures. These pegs are not very wide, so there is always, you know, a theoretical risk of snapping these off and rendering the accessory non-functional. So this is the part that really makes me nervous. I now have to pull his hand off, so let's just get stuck in. Wish me luck. Okay, get his cape out of the way and see how well his hand's going to come off, because he's got an articulated wrist. Oh, okay, there we go. Phew, okay. Bit of twisting and his hand came off. We can see the articulation there on his hand. Okay, so this one is just a straight hand. We don't have articulation at the wrist. It is all just sculpted as one piece. So we can see the peg hole, very dark in there. I'm hoping. Oh, snapped on there nicely. Okay, look at that. Wow, that looks pretty cool. I love that scene. I love that scene when he shoots Force lightning. I think this looks really quite cool. Wow. Of course, it's not too heavy, it's not too long, so it's not really going to overpower his balance. You can see I'm not even having to tweak his pose. He can just stand there and shoot Force lightning. In some ways, I think it's even more cooler to have him shooting Force lightning than lightsabers. I really like that moment. So cool. I love that we've got so many options. This is, again, one of those figures where I'm like, do I need two? Am I going to need a second one so I can pose them with different accessories? And I just like how well my figure in particular is standing up. I think I need a second one. So I can pose him with his lightsaber and then pose him with this Force Lightning fingers. Wow. I'm really digging this one, especially with the soft goods cape with that two-tone, the face detail, and now with the different accessories. He's really cool. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of other Count Dooku figures that have come out over the years, so I'm just going to quickly grab them and we can line them up and see how this one measures up to some of the older versions. So this is really fun when you get a new figure and then see how it compares to some others that you've had in your collection for over 20 years. And wow, this is by far my new favorite Count Dooku figure. The accuracy of that face sculpt is just absolutely beautiful. I love the digital printing. The proportions of him just look far more like a vintage collection figure. That it just looks more accurate, doesn't it? The other ones look very much like action figure toys with their sort of interesting stances, different accessories. I love the soft goods cape. This one is the only one that I have that has a soft goods cape, and it was just simply the wrong color. It is just that one sort of lining color all over, and the cord for attaching it around the neck was very big and chunky. It didn't sort of look like the sophisticated, fancy luxury cape that Count Dooku wears, especially the way that this one folds over the shoulders. Just absolutely beautiful. And I much prefer the Force Lightning compared to some of the other versions that we've had over the years. And of course, he includes both a lightsaber hilt and an ignited lightsaber accessory there as well. It's just leagues above some of these other ones. Of course, I am comparing a bit of apples and oranges. Some of these have very minimal articulation, and some of them even have those very quirky early 2000s action features where you twist them around and their arms sort of swing lightsabers around. So it is a little unfair to be comparing a modern vintage collection figure to some of those kids' toys, but honestly, that's all we had back then. So it's really interesting to see how far Hasbro has come with their attention to detail, the proportions, the accuracy, and I love that face. The detail on the hair, we've got some interesting colors here. A lot of them are very yellow toned. This one here has much more gray toned hair. And it just looks like Count Dooku. It looks like Christopher Lee. I'm really, really happy. And I am going to track down another one because honestly, I want him to be able to pose both ways because I want to swap him out my displays. Some of these I think I'm going to be tucking into the back of my action figure scenes so that I can put this newer version in there because I think it's just absolutely fantastic. Just absolutely fun to see them all lined up. Certainly we've had some interesting iterations of characters over the years, but honestly, I hope Hasbro never stops the vintage collection. I just absolutely love the detail that goes into these figures. Absolutely fantastic. Such a fun unboxing. I really enjoyed this one. He kind of looks a little simple at first, but honestly, checking out all of those details, absolutely fantastic. Very, very happy to have another prequel character to open up from the vintage collection and add into my scenes. Just fantastic. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a TVC fan, I recently opened up the Phase 1 Clone Trooper figure, VC309. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.